All right, guys, hey, today's the day you actually get to use your trig to solve for some missing parts, right? So I've got some triangles here, I've got some angles, some sides, I'm missing some stuff, and we're going to use our trig to figure out the missing parts. This is how we do it. Remember, it's about setting up equations and solving for missing parts. That's algebra, right? Solving equations for missing things. So these just provide us equations that we can use to solve. So let's look at this first guy, right? So when I go about solving these kinds of problems, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify what angle I have. Maybe I have all the angles. In this case, I don't. I'm missing an angle, but this 53, I'm going to use it. And so if I'm going to use that, I want to identify the sides of the triangle relative to that angle. So for sure, across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse. And then if I'm going to be using this 53, then the side opposite of that is this guy over here, and the side adjacent or next to is this guy here. Doesn't look like I'll be doing anything with that one, but I'm going to label it anyways. So I have opposite and hypotenuse are the two things that I either need to know or that I do know. Adjacent, I'm not really going to use because I don't know anything about it. So now that I've recognized the two sides that I'm dealing with, I'm going to come over to my trig functions. I'm looking at opposite and hypotenuse. So if I look along here, opposite and hypotenuse means that I need to use the sine function. Right? That's the one that deals with the two sides that I either have or want to know. And so I'm going to write an equation. I'm going to write this equation, in fact. I'm going to write the sine of theta equals opposite over hypotenuse. Now remember what this is. This is an angle. I have that angle, 53. So I'm going to put the 53 in there. And then the opposite side, apparently I don't know. That's x. So I'm going to call the opposite x. And then the hypotenuse I do have, that is 9. So I'm going to call that one 9. And look what I've done. I've set up an equation that I can solve for x. Sine of 53, remember our last lesson, we just practiced punching that into our calculators. This is just a number. Remember, it's going to spit out a number. And that number is this side divided by that side. So they are equal. This side is x and divided by 9. I only have one variable here. I only have x that I'm looking for. So I can solve this pretty easy. Let's grab our calculator first. I'm going to do the sine of 53. Remember, it's going to spit out a number, some decimal. In this case, 0.7986. I'm just going to do 3 decimal places, so I'm going to round that 8 up to 9. So the number it spits out is 0.799, and that apparently is equal to x divided by 9. Now remember, I'm solving for x. This is a simple one-step equation to solve. Trying to get x by itself, this means divide, so the opposite of divide is to times by 9. That cancels out. If I do it to one side, I got to do it to the other, so I'm going to multiply by 9 over here. So I'm going to take that 9 and multiply it by this guy. Now that guy is just on my calculator already, so I'm just going to hit times 9, and I end up with x equals 7.19. Now, depending on whether you multiply by 7.799 or my long decimal, your decimal may be off a little bit depending on how you round, but that's how we solve. It's pretty easy, right? Let's try another one. First, identifying the angle that I'm probably dealing with. That's the 32. That's the one I know. By the way, we never use the 90-degree angle when we're using our trig functions, right? It doesn't work that way. You're always going to be using one of the other two angles, never the 90-degree angle. So in this case, I'm using the 32. So in relation to the 32, this is always, again, hypotenuse. Across from the 32 is the opposite side, which in this case doesn't look like I know anything about, so I'm probably not going to be using it. And then this is the adjacent side. So I'm dealing with adjacent hypotenuse. So I come back up here. Adjacent hypotenuse is the cosine function. So I'm going to write an equation using the cosine function. The cosine of the angle, which in this case is 32, equals adjacent, I don't know, over hypotenuse. All right, we have one variable. Remember, cosine 32 is just a number. Your calculator is going to spit it out to you. And I just have one thing I'm solving for, x. So let's see, cosine 32, it's going to spit that out. .848 equals x over 12. Again, I'm solving for x. Going to multiply by 12. That cancels out. If I do it to one side, got to do it to the other. So I'm going to multiply by 12 over here. I already have that number on my calculator right there, so I'm just going to get times 12. I get x equals 10.18. All right, so that missing side, 10.18. Sweet. Solve for the missing side, right? These trig functions allow us to solve for the missing side. Let's do one more. We did a sine, we did a cosine. You can probably guess maybe this one's going to be tangent. Let's check it out though. 41 is my angle. There's my hypotenuse, but I don't know anything about it, so probably not going to use it. Opposite or across from the 41 is the x. Next to or adjacent to the 41 is the 8. I'm dealing with opposite and adjacent. Sure enough, that's tangent. Let's write as an equation. Tangent of the angle. So remember, the angle I'm interested in is this 41. That's the one I'm using. And then equals opposite. That's the x over adjacent. That's the 8. One variable, x, this is just a number. I can punch it out on my calculator. Tangent 41.869 equals x over 8. Remember, I'm solving for x. That means I got to get rid of that 8 on the bottom. That's a divide. The opposite of divide is 2 times. Times by 8, they cancel out. If you do it to one side, do it to the other, got a times by 8 over here. That number's already on my calculator right there. I just got it. I'm going to times by 8. And we get x equals 6.95. That side is 6.95. Right? So a little work today. You get to use your trig functions to set up some equations and solve for x. Right? Remember, once you get the equation set up, it's just algebra. It's the trig that allows us to use these functions to set up an equation. And what we're doing is we're finding missing sides of triangles. So good luck with the assignment today. Let me know if you have any questions.